Time now to get the latest trends in dive retailing, travel, and training with Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Now, here's your host, Scuba Radio's Greg the Dive Master.
That is me. Welcome to the latest edition of the Level Up podcast. I am joined by some diving dignitaries in the industry, and we got a fully loaded show for you today as we do this podcast in adjacent with Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. My buddy Willie Klein with me. Willie, how are you? Are you ready for this again?
I am so ready, so ready. Except this issue was even better than the last. I keep saying that every month, but it was truly, really amazing.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be better, but it's definitely going to be more out there because we're streaming live on Facebook Live and YouTube as we do this. So it's live without a net this time around as well. So, you know, all our flaws are going to be exposed. So thank goodness we have some good folks in the industry to kind of, offset my shenanigans. Okay.
Well, no, and we are honored with the presence of the dive god himself today.
We got Neil Watson. Neil, how are you, buddy?
Well, everybody should be comfortable no matter what they do while upstage in terms of something wrong.
Yeah, that's right. we got the dive god looking over us, literally and figuratively, and we're blessed to have him. But man, we got a bunch of folks that we got to talk to before we get into, featuring some of the writers from Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, this latest issue. We got to bring Britton on. He's kind of he's like Willie's main guy. Willie takes all the credit. Britton does all the work.
Yeah, he sure does.
So, Britton, give us the latest. DEMA's just around the corner. We're a little over a month away. And, what's been going on with the magazine and everything else of what you've been up to?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We've got a lot of really great things coming, but we're super excited for DEMA. We're just about 47 days away now, I believe. And October's issue is shaping up to be our biggest issue yet. It's packed with all things DEMA. It's going to be available on the show floor in booth 8075. And we'll even have copies on the lobby floor for all the attendees, complete with an expanded exhibitor and seminar list.
Well, you're going to be seeing me more often than not. You just made a huge mistake, my friend. But
and by the way, too, there's still also time to get an add-in before the 20th of October deadline. So if there is anyone out there who wants to grab some prime visibility during the show, please reach out to me. I'm all ears, and I'd love to chat.
There you go. That sounds like a great opportunity. And any shout outs you want to give before we get started today? What do you think?
Yeah, totally. There's all the advertisers that have come on board so far. I mean, you guys are really the reason that Scuba Diving Industry Magazine can reach who we reach all over the globe and help the businesses that we've been able to help grow. And I also want to take a second to just thank our awesome, incredible writers for keeping the conversations going between dive pros and the retail, travel, manufacturing, and training businesses. It's really, really inspiring to get to be a part of this. And I'm learning so much from both the vets and, the newer generation as well. So it's been a blessing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the new generation, you got some personal news that you're ready to share. What is it?
Yes, sir. Well, I recently, pretty excited to announce that I've been recently nominated for the DEMA Wavemakers Award.
Sweet.
Which recognizes young professionals in the industry for less than 5 years, I believe. But voting does start soon. So if you are a DEMA member, I would really, really appreciate your support. The winner will be announced at the DEMA member breakfast on November 20th. But that's all I got, Greg.
Yeah. Well, that's all. That's kind of a big deal, man. Congrats.
A little bit excited for it. So,
and Wavemakers are basically, the next generation, the new folks coming into the dive industry that we want to shine a spotlight on. And Britton's been doing some good work in that regard. So I think it'll be well-deserved when you win.
Thank you much.
We'll leave it at that, right? Okay, so let's talk about Level Up. This is the podcast for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, and we've been doing this, a few months now, and it's hopefully getting better. I don't know if it is or not, but man, do we have some great guests. on every month. And this week we got Willie Klein, we got the Dive God to help manage things, and of course Britton. So we got that base covered. Our first guest is who, Willie? Who do we want to go to first?
Well, do you realize, Greg, that now you actually have mermen?
What?
Yeah, instead of mermaids on this show, you have mermen. You got Britton, you got me, and you got Neil. We're like your mermen.
Okay, all right. Well, your view of mermen and mine might be slightly different, because I was very hesitant on how to proceed.
I had some cocktails and
okay.
Greg put me
That's
in a
usually
mermaid
where
tail.
yeah,
That would work well.
that's how it starts, and usually how it ends.
So our first amazing contributor is someone that I have such an amazing respect for. Her experiences, she has learned more and knows more about how to help businesses in this industry than I think I've ever in my life could acquire. Catherine comes to us from the Azores Islands in Portugal, and she's coming to the show next month, or in November. I'm making a commercial for her. Go see her. She's got some great advice for you if you're a business owner. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Greg, and Catherine.
Okay. Well, Catherine.
Hey, everybody.
So page 28 is the latest issue of Dive Industry Magazine, and your article is how to grow your business. So I hear you're offering some seminars at DEMA. What are they going to be about?
Yeah, actually, I am absolutely thrilled to be a DEMA featured session speaker this year. I've been attending, I've been in the industry for 40 plus years now, and I've probably gone to over 30 DEMAs in person. And this is my first time as a featured speaker. So I'm both excited and really humbled to have that opportunity. And they actually are going to let me do this twice, which I think is, I hope I don't screw up the first one. But at any rate, I'm doing 2 session tracks on marketing. We have a marketing 101 and a marketing 201, and they're going to build off of each other. So the core concept is connect, profit, repeat, because all of us are in some way an expert in the scuba diving industry, but we might not be experts at business. And that's a great many of us. Like when I first owned my own dive center, I just started a dive center because I loved diving and I had an opportunity. I didn't have an MBA and I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest. I knew how to teach scuba, but I didn't know how to be really successful as a business person. And fast forward 40 plus years, now I know how to do all that. And I want to share it with the people in the room at DEMA. We're social creatures. We crave connection. Scuba diving instructors are really good at making connections, but we often miss the opportunity to create a cash flow connection that makes our customers feel seen and heard and loved, so that they feel like we're like the coolest place to put their money, and they keep doing that. So we're going to do some neuroscience hacks, which that means brain, Greg, what happens in your brain when you're thinking.
Thanks for clarifying that for me.
I just wanted you to stay with me because, I'm here to teach and share.
Big words.
But big words, big words. So it's going to be, I'm doing a lot of talking right now, but what's going to happen in the room is a collaborative effort of people that are already experts at some of the things in the industry sharing with each other on ways that we can connect, profit, repeat. That's what we're doing.
I love it.
And I hope everyone will come and join me.
Well, they should. Because I got to say, if you just have the opportunity to hang around Catherine for any amount of time, you'll just see how bright of a spirit she is. She is so friendly, one of the nicest people you could ever meet in the dive industry. And to boot, she's a previous hand model. You have to ask her about her hand modeling career back in the day.
She told me that if she sees you in the bar, she'll buy you a drink. So there's that too.
Actually, I might do that, but it's a great opportunity for me to tell you that I'll be doing all sorts of giveaways at my little sessions. There'll be toys and games and books and all sorts of value added opportunities when you come in the room. And if you attend both sessions, you get a super good fortune, double bonus opportunity. And I have some dive retailers and also some travel providers that I think are going to come up with some amazing door prizes for session attendees. So
Yeah,
if
and
you
everybody gets a free subscription to our magazine. That's a big deal.
absolutely, there's
Yeah.
that.
Oh
So
wait, it's free anyhow.
No.
well, to say that I'm excited about doing this is an understatement. I am super stoked to have this platform and to be able to share. And I'm excited at what the groups that I talk to work on together and build moving forward.
Well, there you go. If you send out any like mailers or emails or anything like that to promote the seminar, Catherine, let me just suggest that if we put something on there like, look, if you don't show up, I'm going to send you a picture of Neil in a mermaid tail. But
Ooh, there you go.
threats
Negative reinforcement.
or
You have a
promises.
sellout crowd.
Okay, moving on. I think is Dan Orr next? Is that who we're going
He
to?
sure is perfect.
Dan Orr is
So,
going to talk about
I-
cardiac issues. I
I
believe.
have to say a little commercial here. Dan Orr recently was the keynote down in Cayman this last weekend and Saturday for the International Scuba Diving Hall of Fame ceremony, and we're going to talk about that later at the end of the hour with Patty and Amber. But I just have to say he did probably one of the most amazing keynotes I've ever heard in my life on the aging diver. So with that intro, Dan,
Take it away.
For
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah. So page 7, getting to the heart of the matter. So when you gave your presentation, you put everybody in cardiac arrest in Cayman? No, that didn't happen. I'm sure.
No, I don't think so. Hopefully not.
No. Well, what were you talking about there, Dan, in the latest
Well, I was actually
issue?
talking about the aging diver, but I wanted to bring it around to how the aging diver can take that next step when they decide to hang up their fins and be mentors. So it was an opportunity to say, we got all these older people who are out there diving, and then we have these people who would like to continue to contribute once they start stop actively diving. So why not be a mentor and bring in more younger people into the sport?
I like it. That's a good
Yeah.
plan. Absolutely. And
Good time.
but when it comes to healthy hearts and diving, how does that come into play? And what are
Well,
you going to explain in the latest issue?
Well, cardiovascular disease has always been a big problem anyway, and it's actually probably the number one global killer anyway. And when I first came to Dan in 1991, and we published the Dan Axner reports, it did indicate that about 20-some% of the people who were involved in fatalities, they were a result of a cardiac event. When I left Dan there in 2013, that number was well over 30%. It wasn't my fault, by the way. I didn't do it. But
Were
it
you
is
in a
problem.
mermaid tail too?
No,
Okay.
no. But in 2008, Dan actually published a report where they analyzed 947 fatalities. And the number one triggering event in those fatalities was running out of breathing gas underwater. In 2015, they analyzed another set of diving fatalities, and the number one triggering event had changed from running out of breathing gas to underlying health issues. And so that will give you an indication of how prominent cardiac disease is in active diving population. And it's a real serious problem. And what we need to do, and what I talk about in the article, of course, is to make sure that you have an annual physical if you're over the age of 45, or probably not a bad idea to have it even younger. But periodically have a cardiac evaluation along with it. I actually just went through mine this past year to make sure everything was working, and everything luckily is working well. So I want to make sure that I continue to dive for a long time. We need to reduce the number of people who end up dying of cardiac related issues while they're diving.
So true. And this hits a little too close to home for me.
Oh, yeah.
August 2016, I had a one-way bypass, and it was just a routine checkup kind of thing that caught it. Otherwise, I was heading off to the Maldives, and something terrible could have happened. So, I want to reiterate that one a little bit. And
I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day who's a retired Navy SEAL, and he was doing a bike ride, got in the last 5 miles of his bike ride, started feeling kind of bad, and all of a sudden he started having some discomfort in his left arm, and got back home, and he had a cardiac event there in his house.
Yeah, it's not good. It can happen to anyone. It's happened to me. They fixed me up, and I'm good to go, and I'm diving, and everything's fine. But you got to pay attention to your heart health. There's no question about it. Good stuff, as always, Dan. All right.
Thanks,
Up
Dan.
next, Gil, I believe, is up on the docket from Diving Industry Magazine, page 11. AI enters diving. Uh-oh, this sounds scary. Gil, what can you tell us?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, so as William has told you in the past, my career has been as an advertising copywriter. And over the last few years, as I phase out of that and more into scuba writing, travel writing, several of my clients just in the last few years have said, are you using AI to create content? And I said, no, I have not, because I'm lucky enough to be prolific and always have too many good ideas. And I don't want to rely on a computer to do something I have done my whole career. But as an experiment, I pitched to Willie. I said, why do we write an article where we write part of it using AI to write, and I gave it specific information in ChatGPT. I typed in, write a humorous blog in the style of Gilzheimer about honeymooning in Maui with my wife and snorkeling near humpback whales. And so I did that. And in 16 seconds, it spit out a story that was fairly good, but it didn't have any of my personal experiences, didn't have my wife's name, didn't say where we were staying, what the name of the catamaran was, anything like that. And then I generated a photo. I'm going to share this with you. What's wrong with this picture, folks?
A lot of extra fins there.
Yeah. Snow fluke. It's got 3 flukes. So one thing of caution about AI is that you have to double check it. I mean, and then I wrote the second part of the article, which went back to an article I wrote in 1993 for Adventure Journal, where my wife and I did snorkel near humpbacks. And the article began with the words, while on our honeymoon, my wife and I fell in love with another man, and we're not even swingers. He was a big fella, 45 tons, et cetera. It's on page 12 of my story. So I had that 400-word story. And then I spent the last part of the article interviewing industry experts like Jessica and like Jeff and someone at Edema and a few other places. And 4 of the 5 are using AI, but they're using it cautiously. They're testing the waters, they're test driving it. They're not relying on it solely, but they're using it for things like email subject lines and to animate a diver from a still image in an email to an animated image, and for blog ideas and so on. But they're all testing the waters. And the point is, AI is a great tool, but use it cautiously because you have to double check it. It has no personal experience from your point of view, et cetera. So that's how I feel about AI.
Okay. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. It does.
Yeah, what's really cool is that Neil's not even here. That's a deep fake of Neil.
It's right. That's AI Neil. Right. Digital
He
Neil.
disappeared. See, I told you. There you go.
Well, okay. He might still be there. It could just be a camera angle issue. We don't know yet. But yeah, AI, I use it quite a bit myself in like trying to drafting up creative ideas for Scuba Radio. But yeah, if you rely on it too much, or like you just do a search on Greg the Dive Master on Scuba Radio and ChatGPT, God help you. I've won so many more awards that I didn't even know existed. It's pretty remarkable. It does a good job lying even better than I. So you got to take it with.
One more thing.
Yes, Gil.
Sorry, one more thing about AI.
Mm-hmm.
If you use AI and you type in specific instructions for, say, a blog, and someone else types in the same instructions, you're going to come out with identical content.
And that's not good.
That ain't good.
Yeah. Like I said, use it as a idea starter. That's how I do. Samantha Witchcraft, she has a question, maybe?
Yeah, it's Whitcraft, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
I got called that in grade school all the time.
I'm sure. I apologize.
But it is Whitcraft. That's okay. So just to jump in on the AI thing, I do a lot of writing for various different things and projects. And what I've found AI is most useful for is an outline. So I will literally give it the prompt, write me an outline about such and such a topic, being sure to logically include, and then I'll give it a list of the subjects that I think would make a good outline. And that gives it enough prompts that it usually produces you do have to check it, it hallucinates, but once you've checked that outline, it's usually just a great way to, like you were saying, Gil, to just like jumpstart a writing project.
Right. Use it for an outline, but then do your own research and put it in your own words with your own experiences.
Makes sense. Well, since Sam jumped in, I think, Willie, we ought to go to her next. What do you think? How about
Well,
that?
actually, no, she's
No?
a little later on. We're
Okay,
going to
you wanna
go
stay in
to
order.
all the
Okay.
way.
All
We're going
right.
to stay in the order. Sorry. And the
That's all
reason
right.
being is because this next contributor, I was sitting down chatting with him, and he mentioned that he had, I think it was on Facebook, I'd originally seen him. He had been to South Korea and
Wow.
posted these amazing photos. I'm like, what the heck is going on over there? So I reached out to Carl, said, Carl, you got to tell us, because part of what the magazine hopes to accomplish is bring other cultures, other diving cultures, and communicate it to people in the English language all around the world, because our reach is 165 countries. So when I heard about, saw what Carl had done, and we talked about it, he has produced this amazing article. So sorry for the hype intro there, Carl, but it really is spectacular, and I can't wait for people to read it. So go ahead.
Oh, well, where should I start?
Well, tell us
Korea.
about Korean diving.
Well, it's funny. It's not so much the diving so much as their approach to the dive business. And Catherine hit on it in spades. They're a very, very social culture, and they know how to do it to the nth degree. If you read the article, you'll see if you go to a Korean dive center, you're not just welcome. They give you stuff. Coffee is huge over there right now. And it's not, junky coffee. I mean, they have major barista style coffee machines in their operation. Some of them actually have cafes that are like Starbucks level. And seating, they do a lot to get you to stay. And with no agenda, just hang out with us.
You're talking about in the dive shop, in the Korean dive shop, they have this. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. And in the piece, because we don't have a lot of time, I talk a lot about their approach to the purpose built sites. We all have heard of Deep Dive Dubai. They have 3: Deep Station, K26, and Paradive. And I compare them to country clubs, because if you go there, that's what it's like. It's a place I can go after work. I can dive. I can hang out. They've got everything I need. It's all right there. I mean, they include the gear as part of the experience. All I have to do, you really don't even need a bathing suit if you change into the wetsuit in the changing room. They even have towels, and then you can eat there. So if you think what a country club is to a golfer, they've created that for a diver. And in a country where they work only recently 5 days a week instead of 6 and long hours, it's perfect for after work. I can go home, I can dive, I can hang out. So it's a real eye opener.
Well, it sounds like something we have to add to the list. Maybe Willie and the Dive God and I plan a trip to South Korea. Wow. That would be amazing.
I'm in.
Okay. All right. And Carl, you'll lead the group, I hope, right?
Oh, we have to. To saw.
Okay.
Surprised you, didn't I?
He's going to plan accordingly to, not be available at that time, but that's fine. I wouldn't blame him either, but that's good stuff. So you can read the whole article. It's on page 15 of Dive Industry magazine, Scuba Diving Industry magazine. Yeah. So check that out. Good stuff, Carl. Yeah.
And just a quick ad, if you do get over there, be sure to check out places like Coex Mall. Their whole approach to retailing is so heads and shoulders above the West that you can learn a lot just by walking around looking.
Well, I just like the sound of how he described it. So hopefully someone's listening right now like, okay, let's add this to our dive shop. We'll come visit you there too. Good stuff. Good stuff indeed. All right. Next up, Alex Brilski, our good buddy. Are you down in Port St. Lucie right now, Alex? Is that where you are or what? Where are you?
Actually, I'm in Avon Park, which is near Sebring.
Okay. All right. Well, page 31 is your latest article. What is it and why should I care? Sustainability is what you're talking about. So what can you tell us?
Indeed. What I try to do in the article is really make 3 key points. First, most people, I think, in our industry still look at the concept of sustainability as just altruism. It's something nice to do for the environment, or more likely they don't care at all. And the second point, based on that, is that's a huge mistake, because sustainability isn't just a bunch of kumbaya granola nonsense. It is a global societal megatrend that is affecting all markets, and especially the younger end of the continuum, the Gen Zers and the millennials. And what I try to do in the article is present some data from sources such as IBM's Institute for Business Value, Bookings.com, Expedia. I brought the people in from the ATTA, the Adventure Travel Trade Association, and the most recent, in fact, the only data from the dive industry, the survey that was done in 2022 from the Reef World Foundation, to really demonstrate that if you're not on board, you're going to be left behind, because this is a critical issue to our survival. And hence it's pretty chock full of data. But the question I raise is just, why has it taken so long for the dive industry to recognize this? The concept of sustainable development dates back to 1987 with the publication of something called the Brundtland Report. And many businesses have really jumped on it. Two examples I present in the article are two companies, Patagonia and Osprey, the backpacking company. They have a wonderful explanation of their whole mission on their websites, and this is all linked to the accompanying material I have, and showing you what companies who have really embraced this idea have done and can do, and linking it to another concept I've talked a lot about in the past, and this is this mission, this ethos, really gets back to what Simon Sinek talks about in terms of the why of the business, of having a mission orientation. You just can't do, a beach cleanup once a year and expect that that's a commitment to sustainability. That this has to be part of the business ethos, and if that doesn't happen, it's not going to work. The other point I try to make is that, and I can't really say this in a more polite way, the reason the dive industry is beginning to catch on is not because we have led. We are being dragged into this by consumers, because as I try to explain in the data, this is customer demand, and the younger the customer is, the more that demand is out there. And so that's kind of the gist. It's also purposeful because, along with Catherine, actually, I'm going to be working with Deep Blue Adventures, and Cheryl Patterson has put together a wonderful roundtable called Integrating Sustainability and Expanding Your Bottom Line on Thursday. It's a pre-show presentation, a roundtable actually, with myself, with Chloe Harvey with the Reef World Foundation, who administer the Greenfins program. So I'd like you to see folks there, and I'll also be doing a couple other seminars as well in the Deep Blue seminar room.
Love it. And
So
yeah,
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's a good one to boot. So yeah, I mean, once again, he's another one of those folks that if you're at the DEMA show and you have the opportunity to hear Alex speak and share all his knowledge, it's quite a treat, and something I'd highly recommend as well. Good stuff as always, Alex. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, guys.
Up next, Jeff, right? Am I going out
before
order?
we go to Jeff,
okay.
I think, no, you're doing just perfect. I just thought that Neil might want to comment on this next article, because I think that's most of his dive locker.
His antiquated dive gear, old stuff. Yeah, that's what Jeff is going to speak about.
He said he had a double hose regulator donate to the museum down in Cayman, so I just thought that was kind of funny when I saw this article. You're gonna love it, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and last time I did with Neil, he had a horse collar.
Using it.
Yeah, he's still using
exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, and I guess that's the point of the article on page 34. A service department challenge. Antiquated gear is what Jeff has written about. So let's just get right to it. So how do you deal with old stuff? And I don't mean Neil in particular. I mean his gear.
That's great.
What do you think, Jeff? What do you got for us?
Well, these things just happen at the dive shop all the time. You know, we've got obviously a service department's a key component of the local dive shop or any dive center, and we have people coming in all the time. And I kind of bucket them into different categories. And, you know, we have our active divers, and there are the conscientious people that bring in their stuff all the time. It's in good shape, it's clean, it's easy to work on. You know, you're not going to have any issues with it. But then all of a sudden you get the not so diligent diver bringing their gear in, and it's been dragged through the sand, or it's not been well maintained, and we know we're going to have challenges with it. But that's just the active divers. A lot of times we have owners of antiquated dive gear come in, and it's a challenge for us. Challenge for a number of reasons. One, parts. They may still be making the service kits for those regulators, but they're not making any of the spare parts. So if you take it apart and something breaks, it's not going to work anymore. So you got to be really careful about the parts. And then even if everything gets back put together again, it's old. The reliability of it, you can service a regulator, put it out there, and who knows what's going to happen. We've seen it happen with BCs where they just, everything checks out fine in the shop, do the pressure test, everything, but then they take it out on a dive and something happens with it. And then finally, with the gear, you got to look at the liability aspect of it. Do you have the right manuals for that? Do you have all the updated manuals for it? Some of these manufacturers require recertification, or your tech's recertified on it. So there's a lot of issues with that antiquated gear that you have to contend with. But normally what'll happen is a lot of times it'll be people that are non-divers bringing it in because they've discovered this in a basement or at a tag sale or something, and they bring it in and they think it's very valuable. You have to educate them that it's probably not, and they're willing to part with it. But then there's some of the divers who are re-engaging, and they've been out of the diving for a while, and they bring all their old stuff in, and it's really a difficult discussion with them to say, you really should be upgrading your equipment. And sometimes they'll tell you, well, this was top of the line. And yeah, it may have been a long time ago, but it's not anymore. And you try to educate them. It's really hard to, sometimes we had to tell people, we're just not going to service your gear. And it's not a really good customer centric thing to do, to tell somebody you're not going to help them. But in the interest of safety and, making sure that they're safe, as well as keeping your business safe, you just have to let them walk out the door if they're not willing to upgrade.
Right. You got to sell them on the idea like, hey, dude, you're diving with an iPhone 3 and there's a 16 out now. And this deserves to be in a museum as opposed to in the water.
I get in trouble because I ask them where they're buying their tubes for their TV, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I kidded Neil. He might have a year or two on the rest of us. And but some of the gear I've seen Neil has, I mean, I don't even know if they had writing back there for let alone manuals.
In the early days, I had to have 2 sets of gear because dive shops would come dive with me with all of their students, and I was still diving with a horse collar BC and a winded backpack and a J valve,
right?
And no octopus and whatever. And of course, they had sold all these kids all this new stuff, and they're asking the instructor, well, why do we have all this stuff? And Neil's diving with that.
Yeah.
So they said, Neil, either upgrade and start diving with real dive gear. We can't bring our guests back.
Yes.
So I still dove with my junk on my own, but I wore the state-of-the-art stuff when I had groups.
Well, there you go.
So Neil holds a very distinctive record. Aside from holding like the world's deepest record, the deepest dive on air in the Guinness Book of World Records, and about half a dozen other ones that are including breaking concrete with your head. So anyhow, he also holds another distinction as one of the few dive operators that actually got to dive on their own dive boat wreck.
Yeah, well, Yeah.
Care to share?
Actually, I had a dive shop. The owners from a dive shop in Daytona Beach, and it was the two guys that owned the shop and their wives, and they came to Bimini on a fam trip to check out if they wanted to run groups. And we had like 3 days, and it was just spectacular. And the last day, we're doing this shallow dive, 20 feet of water. The seas are calm. And this was the days when, I'd anchor the boat and I'd dive with the groups. And we're swimming around, and towards the end of the dive, time to come up, come back to the anchor line. I start coming up the anchor line, thinking, boy, I don't remember leaving this much scope out. And then I see this shadow. It's my boat. It's on the bottom. It's like, oh, this isn't good. So we came up, and of course, fortunately, we were close to shore. Everybody swam to shore. The boat turned upside down when it sunk. Everybody's gear, personal effects and stuff was on the bottom. So I spent about 3 days, recovered everything. Everybody was safe. They had BCs, and we were not that far offshore. But actually, they didn't book a trip with me. I don't understand.
I don't know why. Really?
They got a free wreck dive out of the deal. What do they want?
Exactly. Search and recovery specialty.
I gave them a PADI wreck diving certificate.
It didn't work. La, Carl.
Love it.
So our next contributor, I have to thank. This is the third in a 3-part series they've written for us, and in our last issue, we had an article about the Olympics and how that some divers with NAUI were involved in placing all the cameras, and it was certainly it vied for our top spot last month between that and the previous second version of this series, which is how to sell your dive business. That's how much interest there is in the marketplace out there for trying to retire or do something different. So go ahead, Greg. Why don't you introduce?
Well, Jessica, welcome once again. So page 22 in the latest Scuba Diving Industry magazine is communicating a change in ownership. So give us a few tips from your experience that works best. What can you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we lay out 4 tips in the article, but I'll give you sort of the pre-tip before we even get to those. And that's really all about confidentiality. Obviously, any change in ownership and selling a dive business that you've worked on for years and years or decades and decades is a really sensitive topic. And so keeping that during the process, or maybe hopefully it was helpful with our other articles, if you're just looking at what's next, or if you are working through a deal, keeping that really close to the vest until a deal is finalized, because it can be sensitive, of course, to you, but to your employees, to your staff, and to your pros as well. So really keeping that close. But then once you have a deal and it's finalized, really working on that communication plan. And there's sort of 4 pieces that we list out in the article. The first is sharing your why, just being really honest and authentic, talking about what brought you to this decision, why you chose the new owner. And there's what you say, but there's how you say it. There's the nonverbal cues and everything that goes into that, because the communication of that message and what's next in your legacy is so important. So first one, just sharing your why, being really honest in what led you to the decision. The second one is considering your audiences. And this is true in really any big announcement that you might have, even if it's not a change in ownership. Different people are going to feel differently, and thinking about the questions you're going to get from your dive pros versus your staff, your retail staff, even your vendors and your partners that have been supporting the store for so long. Just thinking about each of those differently. I use FAQ sheets all the time. How can you have a different FAQ sheet for each of those and know, here's what my dive pros, I know it's going to be the first burning question that they ask me. And that's going to look a little different than the retail associates that are in the store, every day, or who have manned the shop for you for a really long time. The third is just acknowledging that change is inevitable. We all know that the world is always changing. But we've been guilty of this ourselves. Sometimes in a big change, you want to say, it's going to be easy. There's not that much to change. And so my third tip is really just don't sugarcoat it from the beginning. Be honest about the change. Be upfront, even embrace it. Use that moment to really capture what is going to change and just lay it out. It's better to do it in the upfront than to say nothing's going to change and have to recap or, share more about those changes later. And then the fourth is just offering different ways to engage. Where we have seen success in the past is really that face-to-face communication. So after a deal is done and we've closed a deal, really going in person, getting to sit with the ownership, with the team that is going to stay on board, talk to the pros one-to-one or the trip leaders, and then have a customer event. Let them ask questions of us as dive ventures, or if it's a different new seller coming in or new buyer coming in, let the customers be able to ask questions directly, and just keep that open, keep it a two-way, or it might be a three-way street at that point, but keep the communication open, allow for that dialogue, and be able to answer those questions. So those are really our 4 tips, and certainly important if you are selling or looking at a change in ownership, but hopefully those are helpful with any big announcement in a dive shop as well.
Yeah. Well, it's good stuff. And, if you're the owner and you're selling, I mean, step 5 is where's the first place you're going to go once you've sold the business, and you can bring some of your, best customers with you, that kind of thing. You can put your head around that one too. But it's good stuff. And Dive Ventures, they run an amazing operation. So if you find yourself in that situation with your dive shop, you definitely need to talk to them and pick their brain at the bare minimum. And that's you'd help them with that, right, Jessica?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Good stuff indeed. All right, so we finally have gotten back to Samantha.
Finally, Samantha
Whitcraft. And I'm gonna say it right.
Got it
once.
right.
Once. And I apologize for doing it earlier, but we're getting close to Halloween. So what do you want from me? But Samantha, thank you for standing by. Page 23, See a Change nonprofit. That's what you're involved with. Page 23 in the latest edition of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Tell us about some of the latest Sea of Change projects that you're involved with.
Happy to.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the name. It's one of those ones that's hard to remember, but impossible to forget. So
there
it's
you
fine.
go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the Sea of Change Foundation, the title of the article, and thank you for the opportunity to put the article in your wonderful magazine. I appreciate that.
Our pleasure.
It's a good opportunity to get the word out about what obviously I'm a bias a little bit, but a really great foundation. And the reason I think the foundation is worthy of people's attention and involvement in is because we're small but mighty. So we were founded by leaders in the dive and adventure travel industries. And so that influenced our mission statement, which is that we want to create positive change for the natural world that we all love to enjoy and explore. So what that tells you is that the kinds of projects, unique community-based projects that we find to fund, I'm pretty sure would speak to that audience that loves to be either underwater or over the water or on the coast or in the mountains and wants those things that they love and appreciate to be protected. The other thing that's amazing about the foundation, and I've worked in the marine conservation nonprofit field or marine science field for 30 years now, and this is the first nonprofit that I've worked with where 100% of all the funds raised goes to conservation. There is no overhead, there is no admin. All of those costs are covered by our partner at Aggressor Adventures. So that's really, really powerful and really important. So I didn't want to bury that lead. We have 3 focus areas, again, small but mighty, right? So we don't have deep pockets, but we're able to get the best bang for our buck in terms of conservation by being really focused, not just on our mission statement, but what we hone in on. So those successful grants that we fund each year have to fall into one of the 3 focus areas for the foundation. The first is coral reefs, restoration and resilience. So the days of putting a dotted line on a map around a reef, it's not going to do it anymore. So restoration and resilience is key. Ocean pollution, public awareness and action. And then the final and one dearest to my heart is projects that address threatened species and habitats. So some examples of those that we have either finished up or that we're in the middle of funding or guiding or advising on is we funded Project Seahorse to analyze diver citizen science collected data about sightings of seahorses in different places all around the world. And those data were peer reviewed and published. And many of those species had not been fully described in the regions where the divers were able to collect that data. Also, we funded the Sri Lankan Wildlife Conservation Society, because again, we're terrestrial and marine, not just marine, to fund an amazing project called Project Orange Elephant. And so we funded the distribution of 2,500 orange tree saplings to be planted by local farmers. And the reason that's a conservation action is because these farmers are looking for crops that they can bring to the market and make money or eat themselves. But many of the crops are stolen by elephants because they're also looking for food in those habitats. But the wonderful thing is that elephants don't like oranges. They avoid all citrus. They're just not a fan. So when these local farmers plant these orange trees, they get a natural deterrent from foraging elephants, which keeps the elephants safe. And it also gives the farmers a cash crop. So we also funded with that project planting toolkits and 4 irrigation systems. So that was wonderful. We funded Reef Renewal Curacao to fragment 1,500 species of endangered corals like pillar corals and star corals to expand their nursery for species that are now being impacted by stony coral tissue loss disease. And another project that's very close and dear to my heart because I've been able to be involved with guiding it is we work with the Science Exchange International Sea Turtle Internship Program in Mexico. And 2 projects we've done with them is we funded a competition for school children to design a better box for sea turtle nests, because I don't know if you've been to sea turtle nesting beaches, but the default is styrofoam coolers for the nest reclamation. The problem is styrofoam coolers only last 1 season, and then they break apart, and then those styrofoam beads can end up in the ocean, and then sea turtle hatchlings eat the styrofoam. Like, it's just for all the years I've worked in sea turtle conservation, I could never understand the styrofoam coolers. So we had 2 winning designs that were made from local products, and we're working on getting a permit to test those on actual eggs. The data that we collected was using loggers to show that they were safe for the eggs. And then we trained local students in how to, from local vines, make light shields for restaurants along the beaches. And if they participated in the program, they got these beautiful hand-woven light shields that were made by the local students, and yellow bulbs instead of white bulbs. And doing that, we've been able, with the local communities in that part of the Pacific coast of Mexico, to greatly reduce the light pollution on the beaches, which is so important for the success of not only nesting, but also hatchlings. And then finally, oh no, there's 2 more. We were thrilled to be able to fund a graduate student from Arizona State University working on the island of Trinidad at Grand Riviere Beach, which is the largest leatherback nesting and densest nesting beach in the Caribbean. Leatherbacks are critically endangered now. And that beach, I was lucky enough to go there, oh God, maybe 2 decades ago now, and saw my first nesting leatherback, and was amazed at the time to find out that while there are community groups working to protect that beach, there was very little comprehensive data looking at density dependence and questions central to conservation management of that beach. So we have funded that first project, starting to comprehensively collect those data. And then we also funded the Right Whale Sighting Network right here in Florida to create signage at Atlantic coast beaches, letting the community know that these whales are so endangered. They're called the right whale because during whaling, they were considered the right whale to kill. And those populations never fully rebounded from that intensive whaling. And now the remnant population of the Atlantic is subject to a lot of vessel strikes. So these sightings that people have from the beaches are incredibly important to report to the Right Whale Sighting Network so that they can work with They're partners in the shipping industry to avoid the areas where the right whales, moms, and calves have been sighted. So we funded that signage project, which is putting signs up along those coasts, starting, I think, at Sebastian Beach. So that's just some of so we find projects that with a little bit of seed money, our median grant is about $12,000. So even with a little bit of money directed in the right place with the right community work, we can really positively move the needle. And I want to remind people that, of course, we're always seeking donations. We're having a big auction, our big yearly auction in November. So you'll be hearing about that at DEMA. I'll be at the Aggressor booth. Come say hi. And that's our big fundraiser. But we're always looking for donations. And if you want to donate to an organization that I know for a fact is moving the needle in meaningful ways in conservation, and where 100% of your donation goes to those meaningful projects, then I encourage you to check out the Sea of Change Foundation.
And the website is what, Samantha?
www.seaofchange.com, not .org, because we would have had to pay extra for that. And that's money that could have gone to conservation. So it's www.seaofchange.com.
And there's one more piece of news that we need to say. Dan Orr is receiving the Lifetime Explorer Award from Sea of Change at DEMA this year, correct?
How about
That's right. I wasn't going to spill the beans, but I'm proud to say that, Dan, you are our winner this year, well deserved. And we will be plying you and as many people as want to show up at the Aggressor booth Thursday for the last hour of the show to give you your award, celebrate you, and drink some beer and wine.
You heard it first here on Level Up Podcast. So we need to move along a little quickly here. We got one more speaker to go, one more contributor, and I'm going to set the tone here. Many of you might not know, but I wear two hats here. Aside from Publish the Magazine, I also am the executive director of the Cayman Islands International Scuba Diving Hall of Fame, and where there's a museum down in Cayman, and we do a big ceremony, which just happened this last weekend. And Dan was gracious enough to come down and be the keynote that I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast. It was so amazing. But our on the beach reporter that covered the event is our very own Amber Wagonette, and she is going to give us kind of an overview. Greg, I'll let you do the intro there.
Yes. Well, Amber, welcome. So, tell us how the Hall of Fame event went there in the Caymans. What can you tell us?
You know, I got to say, there's probably only one thing that would have made it a little bit better than Willie Klein and Dan Orr in a tux, and that would have been Neil Watson in a tux.
Or a mermaid tail.
I
but
agree.
That's a totally different. You missed that, Amber. That was earlier. But
Next
No,
time.
it was
Next
fabulous.
year,
You know, your writers talk a lot about diving being part of a tribe, right? And that week in Grand Cayman was such a week of being part of a tribe, being surrounded by a group of people that all walks of life, all across the globe, all passionate about one thing, and that, the one thing we call scuba. So it wasn't just about individual accomplishments of what the four royalty and the international inductees, Claudio, John, Enric, and Margot, but also their just collaborative spirit. And I got to tell you, Margot's thank you. If we have Margot's thank you speech on tape somewhere, it just brought me to tears. And the 8,000 kids that she has, she's certified. I mean, it was amazing. And there was, nothing that a little Helene we couldn't have just pushed off to the side and celebrated. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. And the local leadership of Grand Cayman, the Minister of Tourism and Ports, and that whole staff and the whole group of people, man, they put on a really good party.
No doubt.
And what was cool is that we had this room full of people from literally across the planet and all different levels within the industry. And there was one common tie-in. Everybody was passionate about diving, and you could see it, you could feel it. And we're talking to the top of the government, to the person that received the emerging award that has a water sports boat operator. It all was there. And come next year, it's really worth it, right, Amber?
It is worth it. And if you see the photos in the magazine, especially of the statue, it's made by a local artisan using Caymanite. And it weighed, 35 pounds?
Wow.
Very impressive.
What was the statue of?
It's a block of Caymanite with a diver on the side, and then there are stingrays that are at the top of it.
From
Oh, there
Stingray
you go,
City,
Willie. Yeah.
probably.
There.
Yeah.
If you look at my
On the right.
finger
Yeah.
right there, more or
There.
less, you can
There
see.
Oh,
you
okay.
go.
There you go. So look in the magazine. It's in the magazine of Scuba Diving
Exactly.
Industry Magazine. Right.
We also went out and talked to the
Page
local,
40.
We're gonna have what, Dan? Say it again.
also went out and talked to the local school.
Oh
while
yeah.
we were-
Okay. All right.
Yes. Yes. You got to hang out with the local high
And there it
school.
is.
And
Neil's got it right there.
Oh, exactly.
And
He has his own little statue.
there it
Neil
is.
has
you
it.
go.
So Patty is going to talk a little bit, just for a couple of seconds, about the school thing, because it really was significant.
Patty, what can you tell us?
I can tell you it was very impressive. First of all, having never been to Grand Cayman and then to go to their local school, and it was a public school, the facility was beautiful. The principal is a former dive master. And so he was very passionate too about diving. They actually integrate scuba diving into their curriculum through their science programs. They have PE students that are becoming divers. They've got a couple of kids that are ambassadors for the island that travel on behalf of Cayman Islands to encourage, conservation and the island itself. So Dan and John Tett were the presenters for a Careers in Diving assembly, and they invited about 150 high school students to attend. It was inspirational. The kids just were on the edge of their seats through the entire presentation, listening intently, laughing at a lot of the things that Dan especially had in his presentation, that seeing the big fish and oohing and awing, seeing his photographs even of wildlife other than sea life that he's taken. They were so fascinating. And then at the end, they allowed the kids to do a Q&A, and the hands were up. They were surrounding these guys at the end when they were, of course, were they trying to stay out of class? We just don't know. But they all hung out afterward and just surrounded them, asking them more and more questions. And Dan can speak to what they were asking because I wasn't up close to see that. But really neat. And next year, the plan is to go to more schools due to the weather. Some of them were canceled. So it'll be really neat to see how they integrate the locals into the diving part of it and the International Scuba Diving Hall of Fame. So I would say it was a great success, but Dan can speak to what they talked to him about.
I mean, they were asking a lot of really good questions. They were asking about the environment, how divers can contribute to the health of the environment. They were asking about career paths in diving. So the questions were all really, really good.
Excellent. Well, good stuff. I mean, Willie, that's a lot of stuff in the September issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. My gosh.
It sure is. And thank you, everybody. And I want to tell a little commercial for next month is our big DEMA issue. So we're going to have everything DEMA. We've got, we're going to have an exhibitor list in there. We're going to have some seminar lists. It's going to be everything relevant to the DEMA show, and it will be distributed actually at the show, in addition to mailed to all the dive shops, of course, before we get to the show. So that's going to be a wrap, I think, Greg.
Yeah, for the September issue of Level Up, I think that'll do. Till next time, don't forget.
I want to jump in and say one thing,
Catherine?
as a parting encouragement.
Yeah,
divers are beautiful people that love helping others. And if you have not already made some form of contribution to the Hurricane Helene effort, I encourage you to find whatever way that you can do your bit to help those from Florida on up, because it's going to take a long time to recover. And as a personal hurricane survivor of many storms and one big loss in 1995, I know it takes a long while, and it takes a lot of initiative from everybody who can help. So
thank you.
If you haven't done that, do it now.
See, there's that beautiful spirit I was telling everybody about earlier. Catherine Castle, she's the gal. All right, well, on that uplifting note, we're going to wrap it up. Till next month, don't forget to check out Scuba Radio every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern time. I am Greg the Dive Master. Till then, remember, it is always better down where
Down
it's
where
wetter.
it's wetter.
This has been Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Produced by ScubaRadio and the Klein Group.